BlackBerry's long had a reputation for its superior security, something of importance to, I don't know, the many business professionals, high-ranking officials, people who've all relied on BlackBerry's devices in the past. Maybe not as much now, but there was a time. But a case in Canada is revealing that the Canadian government has had access to the global encryption key for BlackBerry's devices, extending back as far as 2010. The government has been fighting for 2 years in this case to keep this information from hitting the public record. A technical report that's part of the filing shows the Royal Canadian Mounted Police confirming it had, quote, the key that would unlock the doors of all the houses of the people who use the provider's services, and that without their knowledge.
Oh, Canada.
Doesn't this sound familiar? It sounds so familiar. I feel like we were just talking about this with a company called Apple just not too long ago. Very, very close.
It's super funny and interesting and ironic. There are so many elements of this that are we want to discuss. I would love to talk about this, only this for an hour, but basically they've had it since 2010. It doesn't apply to companies that have their own BlackBerry servers, so those are safe. But still, one of the facts that came out that I really love about this case is that at some point the court was discussing revealing the key as part of the discovery process, publicly. And I love that was even a thing. They were like, wait, okay, let's just wait a second. If you reveal it, then this is the global encryption key for all of the devices in the world, right? So it would enable anyone who would see that key to decrypt any message from any BlackBerry on the planet, including in the US, which I think makes for an interesting little additional piece of information in this, as I'm not sure how the US officials would react to their messages able to be decrypted by this magic universal key to every home in every part of the world. Maybe BlackBerry has changed it since then, and we don't know quite how the police has obtained it. So it's possible that it wasn't BlackBerry that actually gave it to them as part of the legal proceedings. But if it is BlackBerry that gave it to them, I think it's going to be a pretty tough hit to recover from PR-wise.
Yeah, I definitely think this feels like the nail in their coffin. As Jason said, it's not government or businesses that key. One of you said this. It's not the business or government key that you can get. But I mean, there is this idea that people have that BlackBerries are more secure, and they're just not, unless it was in a certain period of time. Because it does say like between 2010 and 2012 they had access to it.
Yeah, and I think it has something to do with older versions of kind of the BlackBerry OS. Now, at this point, also consider the fact that BlackBerry 10 is kind of going away, if not already away. So I don't know of the relevancy of this encryption key necessarily for current devices. Like, I doubt this has any sort of impact on, let's say, the BlackBerry Priv, the Android version. And BlackBerry's going to release a couple more Android devices before they decide whether they're going to continue with the hardware game for good or not. This might have some sort of influence over that, but I think it's a pretty big black eye to have based your company around security and this perception that you are the secure platform, and then to find out after the fact that for quite a few years then this supposed secret private key, literally the key that opens up all of these devices, wasn't really so private because the RCMP had it. They had that key and they could use it at will as need be. It's kind of
and
discovery.
They used it apparently. One of the big elements. It's impossible not to reflect on the San Bernardino case when you hear this. But one of the elements there was that they would only use the key for this specific phone in this specific case. That argument didn't hold very long, but still, it was part of the conversation. And here, apparently, the Canadian police used it to decrypt millions of messages. So it sort of, you can read it however you want, but I think it sort of lends credit to the idea that if they do have the key, they're probably not going to limit themselves to just this one thing and nothing else. So it's not, again, it's sort of a chilling moment when you realize what's been happening.
How about a little like turning the table, a little upside here? When the whole Apple FBI thing was happening, you know, the constant discussion always kind of centered, you know, eventually at some point touched on, well, if this exists, then it's going to eventually, inevitably fall into the wrong hands. This was a pretty important piece of data that existed in somebody else's hands, whether they were the wrong hands or not. I guess that's open to interpretation. But as far as we know, it never got out from there.
How would we know?
Yeah, I guess we wouldn't know though. So you're right. So I don't know. I'm just trying to find the other angle.
No, you're right. It's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I was just in D.C. and I have a couple friends that work in the State Department, and they were in the process of moving finally after many years from Blackberries to iPhones. I mean, and they had hung on to those Blackberries forever, and you know, as part of like the infrastructure and this idea that they're just more secure. But yeah, I mean, they're obviously not. So.